you get to a point of just ridiculous burnout. And I remember sitting in my backyard with Brian, and I just looked at him one day and I burst into tears and I said, I think I hate my business. Like, I think I hate what I created.
Welcome to another episode of the Leading to Fulfillment podcast, where everything we talk about is meant to encourage people-first leaders, empower individuals to achieve fulfillment, and help your organizations become places people love to work. I'm your host, James Laws, and I have a great show in store for you. My guest for this episode is Jennifer Bourn. Jennifer is a graphic designer, a micro agency owner, a blogger, a course creator, and if her Twitter profile is to be believed, a vacationer. For over a decade now, she has made it her pursuit to build a freedom-based business that she loves. But she hasn't stopped there. Jennifer has put all of her experience of creating her own business into a curriculum for other freelancers and micro agencies that she calls the Profitable Project Plan. In my conversation with Jennifer, we discuss finding fulfillment in all the wrong places, discovering who you are and what's important, her perspective on the unbalanced life, and great tips on how we all could be taking better vacations. But before we get into all of that, I want to invite you to subscribe to the Leading to Fulfillment podcast in your favorite podcast tool. We're on Apple and Google Podcasts, we're on Spotify, and you can even watch us on YouTube. And if we aren't in your favorite place to consume podcasts, please let me know, and I will make sure to fix that. As a bonus, you can head on over to circles.com, that's circles with two I's, and subscribe to our newsletter. There we'll let you know when those new episodes drop, as well as send you original and curated content on leadership, managing teams, and finding fulfillment. And now that we have all that business out of the way, let's jump into my conversation with Jennifer Bourn. Welcome to Leading to Fulfillment. Jennifer, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
When I started this podcast, I realized I was starting with no audience and no real value proposition for guests to be like, how do I get great guests? So I had to go to great guests who knew me and were generous with their time and generous with their knowledge to share with others and love to share knowledge with other people. And so you were obviously one of those guests that I had in mind. With that in mind, why don't you introduce yourself so everyone gets a better understanding of who you are than my little intro in the beginning?
Sure. I am a 23-year graphic designer now. So I have not industry hopped, job hopped. I've been a designer my entire career. But about July of 2005, I started my freelance journey, which grew into a small micro agency building WordPress websites and helping small businesses and solopreneurs with branding, websites, digital, all of those kinds of things. So I've got about 16 years experience building websites and running an agency. I hired my husband, I grew my team to 5, and then went all the way back down to just me again. So I'm back to being a freelancer. But about 5 years ago, I got into courses. And so alongside my client work, I run courses, a cohort-based course called Profitable Project Plan, some other smaller courses. And then I run live events, 3 per year, called Content Camp, focused on brand messaging, website copy, and content marketing.
Wow. So you're doing a lot. You got your freelance business and clients. You got courses that you have to kind of keep up and keep fresh. Yeah. I know you do conferences around that. Matter of fact, one of our team members, Quay, went to, I think, one of your first content camps. Yes. And came transformed. Like his eyes were opened to a whole world of understanding that he didn't have. And he's been carrying that. He's now the director of our main product, Ninja Forms. He's running the whole thing. I don't do anything now. So that I think was birthed out of coming to that first event, which was really exciting for him. And he still talks about it today.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it was a really cool experience. So I will put links to all of that stuff and resources. So anyone who's interested in checking that out, I highly recommend you do so. When I was thinking about guests, one of the things I was thinking about was people who are generous. The other thing, I was looking for 2 types of people, right? I was looking for people who either had a unique or successful people-first style of leadership, Or I was looking for people who had or were working on achieving fulfillment in their general lives, which is challenging because fulfillment is different for so many people, how you define it. So I'm going to define it in a very broad stroke, which is where you have determined what's important to you and you've designed your life around that important thing. And so I can't think of anyone who has done that more fully and more publicly and like outspoken. In fact, in your Twitter profile, one of your descriptors is vacationer. Yes. But my guess is that wasn't always the case. There was, I feel like, and actually I know a little bit of your story. I know that there was a time, what was the moment, what was the pivot where you realized like, what I'm striving for isn't fulfilling me, and what would really fulfill me is X. What was that like? What was that transition period for you?
I don't know if I knew what fulfillment I was searching for, to be honest. I knew that I loved what I was doing, or at least I did love what I was doing, right? But I got to a point where, I started my business with a toddler, like with a 2-year-old, and I was pregnant. And so when I had Carter, if I wasn't working, I wasn't getting paid. And 6 months before, we had bought this huge house that we're in now, and we had a huge mortgage. We bought way too much house for what we could afford at the time. And so if I wasn't working, I wasn't getting paid. So I had Carter, and I was back working full time in 2 weeks, where he just laid across my lap while I'd work over him. And for a span of like 4 years, I worked 16, 18-hour days every single day. Right. And the kids be playing and I'd be working, and we'd move around the house I did whatever I needed to do to get that work done. Right. And I got really creative with how we did it. But you do that long enough, and Carter was a terrible sleeper. So you do that long enough where you're never taking a break and you're not really sleeping much. You get to a point of just ridiculous burnout. And I remember sitting in my backyard with Brian, and I just looked at him one day and I burst into tears and I said, I think I hate my business. Like, I think I hate what I created, and I want to quit. And I just want out. I need to stop. Like, I hate everything about what I created for myself. I just created a terrible job. Right? I'm a horrible boss. I have a terrible job. I hate everything about what is happening. And I remember Brian looking at me saying, okay, we can fix this, right? Maybe let's back it up a minute. Maybe abandoning your business isn't the best idea. Maybe we look at fixing things, right? And it was about that same time that I really figured out I needed help. My business, I started my business in July, and I hit more than my full-time normal job salary that first 6 months. And I hit over $100,000 in my first full year. And it just kept going. Like, my business was just growing so fast, and I was only one person and I had no help. And I found myself joking with people that they're like, oh, what do you do for fun? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, my business is my hobby. You've heard people say that.
I still say it, unfortunately.
Okay, that's bad. We're going to fix that. Right?
That's why I have you here.
Oh my gosh. But you're like, well, my business is my hobby. I like working on it. And I started I found myself looking to my clients and my customers for fulfillment. Like, I wasn't getting personal fulfillment out of my personal life because I wasn't living it. And so I was looking to getting a yes from a prospect was where I would find fulfillment. And what I was doing is I was undercharging to get the yes, to feel good about myself and to get that fulfillment, which was secretly sabotaging the success of my business and the revenue that I could have been making. So I kind of reached this boiling point of like, everything is terrible. I hate it and I'm going to quit. And I realized I needed systems and processes, because without documented systems and processes, you can't delegate, you can't get help, you can't automate, you can't do any of that. And I needed someone to step in and run all of the things that were running me ragged. And so I ended up hiring my husband to step in and run the admin side of my business and do all of the things do all the things I don't like doing. And he did, which was amazing. And we ended up, continuing to hire and automate everything we possibly could, which allowed us to basically eke back a life. Right. And all of a sudden I started implementing systems, processes, delegation, automation, and getting help. And then I'm like, I have time. I'm not working nights. I'm not working weekends. We're taking vacation, right? I went from working every night, every weekend, barely ever taking vacation to never working nights, never working weekends, and taking like 9 weeks of vacation a year where I don't even bring my computer.
That's crazy.
But I don't even bring work.
And so as you went through this transition, you scaled back, you decided you were burning out, and you hated your boss, which was you. And you hated the business that you built, and you were like, something needs to change. And you started building out all these systems. You started to get back this time. So you filled this time with vacation, it seems like, right? A lot of this time got filled with travel. What did you fill the time with once you had it? Because I think, so I understand a little bit of what you're feeling and talking about, like, this idea of, my work is my hobbies. I think I did that because in some ways I was afraid to find out who I was. Like, I so identified by my work and my achievements and my accomplishments that I thought, if I don't do that, then who am I? I didn't even know who I was. And so I went through
especially for freelancers, that's the scary thing, is when you identify as your identity is wrapped up in your business. So the success of your business is tied to your own sense of self-worth. And we get sometimes in that trap, and finding a separation, right? And finding fulfillment in your business and in your personal life separately, it pulls that away to where your own feelings of worth aren't tied to whether a client says yes or no, or the revenue you're bringing in, or the success of your business. It's tied to those feelings of, did I love what I do today? Did I wake up excited about what was on my plate? Did I go to bed happy about how my day went? So you kind of have to separate some of those things.
I think that's solid. I tend to define fulfillment almost in the exact words that you use. I think for me, I can define, if I'm fulfilled, is I can answer pretty well yes to these questions, at least on some capacity, that I love what I'm doing. I believe what I'm doing matters. And I can see the impact my influence, my work is having on that thing that matters. Mm-hmm. And if I can say yes to all those three things, I'm fulfilled. And the funny thing is that doesn't have to apply just to work, right? Yep. Like spending time with my family. If I love it, and I believe it matters, and I can see the impact that I have on my son, and the impact I have on my family and my home, I feel fulfilled. I generally feel fulfilled if I can check those boxes off.
100%. And I think when you are working constantly and you eke back time, right? When I suddenly found myself with more time, I'm like, wow, my projects are taking about 50% less time to get done once I have systems and processes and automations and help. You have different things that you can do with that time. Like, some people look at that time and say, sweet, I'm going to take on more work. I'm going to fill it with more work. I'm going to help more people. I'm going to make more money. Right? And then other people are like, awesome, I'm going to work less and I'm going to make the same amount of money, and it's going to be amazing. And I can pick up hobbies and travel and do things. Right? And at first, I did that. I'm like, I'm taking a break. I'm like, I need a break. I'm just going to work less for a little while and enjoy it. And then I started looking at, okay, I don't necessarily want to take on just more work to take on more work, but I want to start investing some of this time I've gotten back in building other systems and processes for different parts of my business, or looking at, right, what's going to make me really happy in the work that I'm doing? What's my favorite part of what I'm doing? And part of that was also recognizing that light bulb moment of teaching one of my clients something and having them like go, oh oh my God, like that was huge. And it brought me back to when I was a little kid and I had always thought I wanted to be a teacher. Well, I wanted to be a ballet dancer, but I don't have that body type. So then I wanted to be a teacher. And I had parents who, bless their hearts, were like, teachers don't make any money, so let's go for a career where you can be self-sufficient and not need anybody, please. So I ended up going into electrical engineering, which led to design, which led to websites. But I had always loved that idea of being a teacher. And so I started looking in my business at where could I bring that into my business? Right. And that led to the workshops and courses and things like that. So I think some of it is really looking at first, I didn't really know what fulfillment looked like. It wasn't until I started having more time to explore things outside work that I started realizing when your identity is separate, when your joy is separate, when you can find joy in your client work or what you're doing in your career, but also joy outside of that, right? And when you are living a full life, your business is just a little part of that. So the ups and downs aren't as big of a deal, right? The valleys and the peaks aren't as big. The ripple effects of the positive and negative in your business are minor. Rather than being, right, oh my gosh, my world's crashing to an end. I didn't land this project.
And you said something I think is really powerful too, right? Like in your journey towards fulfillment, right? You didn't know what fulfillment necessarily even was. You just knew that it wasn't where you were at and you were burned out. So obviously you were getting to the end of the day. And I think this is a good test of where you're at. You were getting to the end of the day and you weren't full. You were spent. You were depleted. And you were worn out. And I think
disappointed.
And a full life, you come to the end of your day and you go, I feel full. The things that I have done throughout the day, the choices that I have made throughout the day have ended the day where I feel full and ready to, enjoy my evening and wake up and do it all over again. Ending your day full. And the other important point that I think you brought out that I don't want people to miss is that finding fulfillment is a journey. It's not a switch. You don't just turn it on and go, okay, I'm going to choose to be fulfilled, flip this switch, and all of a sudden you're fulfilled. It's a journey. You have to discover what are the barriers that are in your way and what are the opportunities that you have not given yourself a chance to explore. And you kind of exemplified that in your story, right? That you were working so much that you didn't give yourself any opportunity to decide that there was anything else in your life that was important enough to give it to it. And once you pulled back and realized, I've gotten to my end of my day and I am depleted, I am disappointed, I am not full, you started to make changes. And it was only when you started to make those little changes that fulfillment was discovered. I think people need to hear that.
Well, and sometimes they are just little changes, right? We didn't start with, hey, let's take tons of vacation. There's no way that could have happened. But like my first goal was, I want to not work on Saturday, right? It wasn't, I want to quit at 5. I'm like, let's be honest, that didn't happen for a while. But it's like, I just want to not work on Saturdays, right? And that was hard. That was a struggle. And one of the things we did as a family to make that possible for me was we would leave the house. Because as somebody who works at home, work was always there. And if we didn't have plans, it was too easy to just walk in my office and sit down. So we kind of implemented this rule, never be home on Saturday. Saturdays are always for fun, for adventuring and going places and doing things and having picnics or going for hikes or whatever it might be. And we started just saying, hey, never home on a Saturday. And because I wasn't at home, there wasn't that pull to go sit down and do work. But like that first goal was just one day. And then I was like, maybe let's not work the whole weekend. I'm still going to work long hours in the middle of the week, but let's not work the whole weekend. Right. And then it was, let's quit at 5. And then it was, hey, maybe we could take a 4-day trip. And I remember our first 4-day trip being just, I came back and I was so refreshed and I felt great. And then it was, we worked up to let's take a week off and then let's take 10 days off. And one of the things I started to notice when I started finally giving myself the ability to take vacation, to take breaks, is it created these mini deadlines. It created these mini deadlines for me and for my clients. So internally, I realized I can go about 60 days and push pretty hard. But at that 60-day mark, I'm done. So we started to realize I need a break every 60 days. And so I would be able to, and we'd put it on the calendar in Sharpie. So it's up there, vacation. So I knew like 60 days, we can do this, family. Like we are on it. We're all going to work together. You do your homework. I'm going to do my work. You do your thing. In 60 days, we're on vacation. Like, let's go. And we work in these 60-day sprints as a family, and everybody was on board. But that same deadline for clients is like, hey, we're going on vacation. Like in so many weeks, get me this by this date, or it's going to sit until we get back. And no client wants their project to sit. They're like, okay, we'll get you exactly what. So it gave us these little deadlines to get clients to get stuff done faster, which worked in our favor because it helped us finish projects faster. But I started structuring all my website projects as 60-day projects. And we just, every 60 days, we'd work and take a break. And when the kids were really little, we would tell them, all right, look at the calendar. See this green line? That's Disneyland. Now, for the next so many weeks, mommy has got to work a lot. And so's dad. Like, we got big deadlines to hit. So every day we're going to work together to make sure you do your homework, we'll do our work. And at the end, we're going to Disneyland. And so every day we'd remind them, we're going to go, but you have to do your part. Like, if I have to babysit you doing your homework, this is not going to work. Right. And so the whole family would get on board and we'd do it. And it was great because we were all working toward the same goal.
It's really interesting to hear you say it because it actually introduces a concept that you talk about that is a different take than I've heard it. And I want to kind of poke at it a little bit, which you hear so much talk, especially today, with the great resignation and everybody and all these things shifts, is this idea of work-life balance. It's a hot topic. Everyone's talking about it. And I've been talking a lot about work-life integration, that I think, I don't think we want life and work balanced. We want life to win every single time. And honestly, work is a part of our life. Like, life is the whole thing. Work is just a slice of that particular pie. But you have a concept that you call the unbalanced life that you talk a little bit about. Can you unpack what you mean when you talk about the unbalanced life?
The whole concept goes back to a talk I gave in 2016 about teeter-totters or seesaws, right? Depending on where you live, we call them different things. But if you think about when you were a kid and you ran to the playground and you jumped on a seesaw or a teeter-totter, right? One end was always on the ground and one end was always in the air. And the fun was that you got on and it went back and forth and you always got a turn to be up in the air, right? To rise up. But there was always that one mean kid that would get on and sit down and you'd get stuck at the top. And you're like, this is terrible. Let me down. Right? There was always that one kid. If you hit that teeter-totter, if you go there alone, there's no give and take. You're just stuck. If you look and you try to balance a seesaw or a teeter-totter, if you try to get it perfectly balanced, it is so hard because it won't stay there naturally. It requires constant work and effort because that's not natural. That balance is not natural. So if you think about work and life as sitting on each end of the seesaw, on each end of the teeter-totter, if it stays in one end for too long, there's struggle and frustration, right? If you try to have them balanced, it's constant work that's not fun, right? It's stress. But if you just let it go back and forth, right? That's the natural state and it's easy. It's just that gentle up and down. Like sometimes you might stay up a little longer. Sometimes you might stay down a little longer. But as long as there's constant movement, everything is good and there's flow and you're having fun. If you think about work and life that way, Sometimes when you're up against a big deadline, work has to come first. And sometimes when you're taking vacation, family and life has to come first. But as long as one doesn't come first for too long, you're okay. And that gives you the permission of saying, I've got a big goal. I'm going to go all in and work to this goal without feeling guilty. And it allows you to go all in on your family without feeling guilty about neglecting your business because you're not doing it for too long. And I think that's one of the things I had to learn, because early on in my business, if I wasn't working, I felt guilty that I was neglecting my clients and my business. And if I was working, I felt guilty that I was neglecting my kids. And there was always this kind of tug of war, or this pull between the two. But once I embraced the notion that there's going to be a give and take, and that's okay. Sometimes my kids are going to come first. Sometimes work is going to come first. Sometimes I'm going to come first, right? It's just going to depend. But as long as there's always an ebb and flow, and as long as one doesn't take priority too long, then I feel great about it.
I think that is an amazing analogy, and it speaks very much to what I think of when I think of work-life integration. It's why we, in our organizational culture, we highly recommend the flexible work schedule, which is we don't have 9 to 5s and we don't have office hours. Every person works when they work their best, and they spend time with their family when they can be the best for their family and when their family needs them, or when their hobbies need them, or whatever they can, because life doesn't happen on a schedule. It's actually why I actually push against this idea of a 4-day work week being kind of memorialized, is because usually the way that looks is like, oh, we're all going to take Fridays off, so we're going to have 3-day weekends every weekend. Well, my kids' school functions don't always happen on a Friday. Sometimes they happen on a Wednesday. And guess what? I'm going because it's important to me, and it's something that I have defined as important. And so when that time comes, I need to be able to, just like you said, right, ebb and flow, and let that balance come. And when life and personal and home and family matter, when that goes up, I'm going to give it my full attention, and each give and take. So I love that flexibility and of the analogy of a seesaw. It's really powerful. I hope people are listening to that and thinking about their own schedules and how they are giving and taking, both to the professional and the personal in their lives. It's very, very cool. Let me ask you this, as we try to do about 30 minutes as we're starting to wrap around. I'm going to ask advice from you, who is admittedly the self-proclaimed vacationer, yes, to myself, who is admittedly very bad at vacations. And I'm still working very hard at it. I try to model to my team. I talk about it. I let them know where I'm weak. And I tell them, certainly, never do as I do, because I know I'm broken and I'm working on it. So I'm able to talk the talk. Let me ask you this. As the vacationer, what advice would you give? Because you talk about this idea of having, we talk about having opportunity to even find fulfillment, to find what are the things that fulfill you. One of the ways that we can do that is, if you're having a hard time in your weekly schedule, at least take a chunk out of the year, or some pieces out of the year, and take some vacations to unplug and give yourself new opportunities. What advice would you give to somebody like me, who's a bad vacationer, to take to take a better vacation and find the healthy approach to unplugging and giving opportunities for hopefully to discover what would fulfill me?
I definitely have thoughts about this, because when I first started taking vacations, I was really bad at it. Right? So because you don't really know, you're like, okay, I have some days off, but I'm going to work all the way up until the second I leave. And so at first, every vacation started with me coming off an all-nighter, trying to get every single thing I could possibly get done before I went. So the first day of my vacation, I was exhausted and cranky, and you don't recover from one of those in just one day. So I started my vacation off feeling like crap and being crabby with my family, right? And then what started to happen is, by like day 4, day 5, I'm like, okay, everything's great. But all of a sudden then I'm like, wait, I'm back in 2 days and I know I have a mountain of stuff waiting for me and I'm starting to have anxiety and stress and I'm not looking forward to it. And I'm thinking, I shouldn't have even taken this vacation. That was so dumb. Like, what was I even thinking? Right. And you start going through this, man, like this, it wasn't even worth it because you have so much waiting for you. And it was miserable, right? It wasn't fun for anyone. Or if you feel
Preaching
like
to
you
the
have
choir
to take,
over here.
oh my God. Or if you feel like you have to take work with you on vacation, no family is happy when they're like, come on, let's go to the pool. And you're like, let me check this email. It's never a good thing. So what I started doing is padding my vacations with extra days, even though I wasn't going to be gone. So and I first started with 1 day. So if we were gone for 7 days, I put 8 days out of the office. And my last day was my finish all the things in a normal workday day. But my clients, everybody else thought I was already gone. So I gave myself 1 day to kind of wrap everything up and feel really good about it. And then I was like, that worked so good. I'm going to give myself 2 days before. 1 day to finish up. 1 day, if I overestimated how much I could get done on that day, I could actually get those other things done and pack without packing at midnight. So I'd pad 2 days before. And it worked so good, I started padding the back end. I'd actually come in the office a day earlier than all my clients thought, so I could check my email, check where projects were at, see what was happening, get my mindset right, reorient in. So my first day in the office was productive and good. So I started padding extra days on the front and the end, and that made a huge, huge difference. The other thing I started doing is notifying clients way in advance. So a month out from my trips, I put a bright red, bold, notification in my email signatures that says, Bourn Creative will be closed from this day to this day. No email, no phone. I am unavailable, right? If you want anything done, this is the deadline to get it to me. Right? And at first I set that deadline for 2 days before I went on vacation. So dumb. Then I learned you got to set that a week or two out to give you time to do the work without being stressed. But every conversation I would say, hey, just remember, I'm going to be out of the office for this week. The deadline, if you need stuff done, the deadline to get those requests in is this date. And every back and forth, I started reminding them of that. The interesting thing is that what started to happen is, one, clients want everything done before you're going to leave. The minute you say you're going to go on vacation, everything they've ever wanted in the history of the world needs to be done before
all of a sudden
you go.
It's all an emergency.
Yep. So giving them time, giving them a deadline and getting that done, they felt great. But my retainer clients and my long-term clients knew my schedule in advance because from Brian's previous career, my husband's previous career in the fire department, we had to pick every vacation day for the year, the first week of December for the following year. So we knew every vacation day we were going to take, and we still do that today. We know every vacation we're taking in 2022 because we already planned it. So I would put that in my clients, in our project management system. My clients started taking their vacation at the same time that we were taking our vacation. So we're like, hey, I'm going to be gone this week in July. And they're like, we just booked our vacation for the same week. So that works out really well. I mean, I know that doesn't happen for everybody, but for me, it was amazing. I think the other last thing is if you are somebody who's going to completely unplug and you're nervous about that, is having a backup person, having somebody else who's going to check things for you. I go on vacation and I'm like, peace out. I'm not answering the phone. I'm not checking email. I'm not responding to anything. You're basically dead to me until I get back. And I feel fine about that. I have no qualms whatsoever about that. Now, my husband on the other end is not somebody who can do that. He finds peace and he finds relaxation after he's been able to do a quick check to make sure the world isn't crashing down on him. He couldn't enjoy a day with no Wi-Fi on vacation unless he had 30 minutes in the morning to check all the things. And then he could put it away and just be for the day. So while I go on vacation and I'm like, I'm out, he would 30 minutes, he'd check everything, make sure, shut it down and be good. So I never really had to worry about it. And then when he exited my business, I've got a backup who I'm like, hey, just double check and make sure the world's not crashing down around me. There's no major emergencies. If there's an emergency, text me. Otherwise, I don't want to hear about it. And my clients know that and they respect that. And I think that's also part of the reason why some of my clients like working with me is I model that behavior for them as well.
That is some great stuff. What's great is that's awesome if you're a freelancer, but I want to say if you're an organizational leader or a manager, this stuff still applies. Like instead of your clients, you have your team and they need to have that, that knowledge of when you're going to be gone up front, build in that wind down time and that wind up time as you return to get back up to speed so you don't come back stressed and anxious. And even more importantly, managers and leaders do that for your team. Like help them wind down and ease back in. Don't give them permission to totally disconnect and unplug while they're on vacation. These are things that we can do as organizational leaders, as well as apply them to us as leaders as we take our own vacations and model that for our team. That's some great advice. I have a ton of notes that I have to kind of process as I think about it. The other one is the intentionality of your vacations, that planned a year in advance, you know exactly what you're doing and it's locked in.
Sometimes we don't know what we're doing, but we know the dates we're going to be
We're going to be doing something at this time.
We have the green, like green is our color code on we have a 3x4 foot wall calendar that everything goes on. It's all color coded and green is our family vacations. So we first put all the school stuff, like all the no school, holiday school stuff. And then we put all the family vacations and then we put in work obligations. And then we start putting in all the fun things we want to do that we know about, right? That are scheduled. But so like next year, I know what I'm doing spring break. We know what we're going to be doing in the summer. Like we know what we're doing certain times, but I don't know what we're going to be doing on Thanksgiving because we haven't figured it out yet. But those 10 days are marked out in my calendar. So we know we're going to be gone. We just don't know where we're going to be yet. But we got really used to doing that because of the vacation and holiday picking in the fire department. That's how they did it. They had to pick it all in advance for scheduling. And we just got used to it and have kept that. And it has made such a difference because let's face it, it's easy to work when you don't see something on your calendar. So the other reason why we put it all in our calendar, on the wall calendar, we put it in Sharpie so it can't be erased because it's also a commitment. And we do that with fun things. So like I know, hey, on September 17th, there's an all-day music festival called Ain't Necessarily Dead Fest near us that we want to go to. We go to it every year. So it's on our calendar in Sharpie, in purple. All our concerts and music stuff are in purple. But it's on there in Sharpie as a commitment. So if something comes up and it's like, hey, are you free on September 17th? I can say, actually, no, I'm not. I have plans for something fun. So we intentionally put fun things on our calendars and we put them in Sharpie to commit to say, this is important to me and I want to do it. So when we see things come through our Facebook feed and it's like, I want to go to that. It goes on the calendar and it goes on it in Sharpie. Because if you don't put things on your calendar and you think, ooh, I want to go to that, and then you don't put it on your calendar, you forget about it. Or if you don't commit to it and put it on your calendar, it's too easy for other obligations and errands and non-fun things to get in the way. And then you end up not doing it. And you look back and go, oh man, that was last weekend. I wanted to go to that.
I think that's key. We've heard the adage before, right? If you don't schedule your time, someone or something will. And so be intentional about it. Jennifer, thank you so much for being one of the first few guests on Leading to Fulfillment and dropping knowledge bombs and hopefully helping a bunch of people think more clearly about how they manage their schedule. If they want to learn more from you, as I know there is a ton more to be learned from you, where can they do that?
JenniferBourn.com, and it's BOURN, no E, not like the movies.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And hopefully we'll be able to have you on again. You also have a podcast that's launching yourself on this topic specifically for freelancers called Seeking Satisfaction. We'll put a link to it and make sure everyone is aware of it when that drops. I accidentally cut the recording just a little bit short, so let me take this opportunity to say a huge thank you to Jennifer Bourn for joining me on the Leading to Fulfillment podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed recording it. Everything we mentioned, including a full transcript of the show, is available over on our website, and you can access it anytime that you want by visiting leadingtofulfillment.com/002. As any of you listeners who follow me on any of my social channels may know, I often talk about the difference between work-life balance and work-life integration. I share that work is a part of our life and not something separate or opposite to it. It's not something to be balanced, but something to be integrated in a healthy and fulfilling way. Jennifer does a great job of talking about that integration with her analogy of a seesaw or teeter-totter, depending on where you grew up. You're only truly happy if you aren't stuck on one side for too long. Fulfillment comes as there is give and take on each side. But one thing is certain, balance is never the answer. Trying to keep both sides level at all times is a recipe for tension, frustration, and ultimately burnout. While all analogies break down eventually, and you could easily argue that the seesaw pits work and life as opposites, competing for your attention, the important takeaway is that we need movement or progress to really find fulfillment. You're never going to find fulfillment with your head in the clouds or your feet only on the ground. It's discovered in the movement between those two states. Are you allowing yourself that movement, or are you stuck? Answering that question, just like Jennifer did, as she shared in the beginning of our conversation, is the first step to making a change. And if you're a leader, are you creating a space and opportunities for your team to experience that movement for themselves? Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join me on the next episode, Leading to Fulfillment.